PSE EVL 32. Hi. Apparently Ellie wants in on this review too. So, extended review of the EVL 32. So at this point in time I have well over 1,000 shots through this bow, so not a crazy amount, but definitely enough to give you a extended review on. I haven't hunted with it yet, but I will start off this video by covering some of the things that I glossed over or just only touched on in my first impressions video, and then I'll talk about the bow as I have it set up right now, what I found shooting the bow and why I have it set up this way, as well as how this bow compares to my Expedite, which if you follow Knights of the Apex on Instagram or here on YouTube, you know how much I love that bow. I think I've done like 3 or 4 videos covering at this point. So let's get into it. So the EVL 32. So I've had this bow for a few months now. 2 things that I didn't really touch on in my first impressions video was the vibration and the noise. So I talked about the balance a lot and that the bow felt pretty dead in the hand. That continues. I've got the bow fully rigged up now. It's still a very dead in the hand bow. There is some residual vibration after the shot, and in slow motion footage you can actually see some of that vibration, just like with most bows, traveling through the limbs, but that is after the arrow is 20-30 yards out of the bow and already headed down range. So it's nothing that would impact accuracy. The EVL is much quieter than the PSEs of the past, and it's just as quiet as the most of the field for 2021 as well. I would say it has about half of the noise coming out of this bow as my Expedite. In terms of like how it stacks up to the rest of the field, they're all really on top of each other. You're gonna have to take out some instruments to really tell the difference. The noise impulse of this bow is definitely less aggressive than years past. It's definitely the quietest PSE. The EVL is no slouch. This is a really, really comfortable bow to shoot. I would venture to say that this is probably the best balanced bow for 2021. I would put this on par, if not a little better, than the primes. The primes tend to be a little bit more back heavy. This bow just balances completely balanced, no sort of back or front heavy tendencies, no top or bottom heaviness, and with my accessories that I'm running, I really tried to keep that natural balance point of the bow and not screw anything up. So as far as accessories, we'll start bottom to top. So I'm running Quattro Archery Dentro stabilizers. These are 8-inch bar on the back and an 11-inch bar on the front. I'm running 4 ounces on the front and 6 ounces on the back. Quattro also, they went crazy with their Cerakote machine, and they made me some custom hardware, so that's where these orange hardware pieces come from as well. As far as the rest, keeping the color coordination in step, I'm running a Hamskea Hybrid Hunter Pro. This is their FDE color, so I think if you went with the tan, it would probably match the tan of the PSE a little bit better. And then the sight is the Exact Rise Hunter. Right now I'm running the single pin, but I also have a 3-pin setup. And then I already mentioned the tight spot quiver. Arrows, I'm running the Axis Long Range 300 spine, and currently I am shooting them with 125 grain points and a mixture of both the standard aluminum and titanium half outs from Easton, and this bow is just absolutely loving them. It is grouping really, really well. These are not the stock strings, of course. These are aftermarket strings. These are from A3 custom bow strings using Bloodline B99 material. There's nothing wrong with these stock strings. PSE's stock strings are actually pretty good as far as industry standards kind of go. And I found that for all the PSE bows that I've owned, but I do work for Bloodline, and I do believe that their material is superior to a lot of the other bowstring materials on the market. It doesn't require any wax. Their coatings and materials I just find hold up and are more consistent in a large degree of temperature ranges and conditions. So I live in Florida, it's hot most of the year, it's 100% humidity, and then I travel to the Northeast, out west, so different temperatures and climates, and this Bloodline material holds up really well. I do think that the aftermarket strings from a good quality builder are going to be better than the stock strings that you get, but there was nothing wrong with the stock strings. I had probably close to 1,000 arrows through the bow before I swapped out for these A3s, and they were fine. They were still in good shape. I was starting to get a little serving separation just in some of the parts on the cams, but nothing that would impact performance. So overall, this bow is held up really, really well. No sort of creeping, settling, anything like that. I did fire a E-clip off, which has happened. I've done that to a Hoyt a number of times actually, and now a PSE. So that is rare that you'll do that, but I did happen to shoot an E-clip off, but so I'll have to replace that. But other than that, that is the only sort of wear and tear this bow has exhibited. It's just held up really well, shoots really well balanced. It really is just a fun bow to shoot. When I swapped out these strings, I took advantage of the bow being totally broken down to play with the new split bus cable system that PSE introduced for this year. The M-Barks, their mid-price point bow, and the EVLs both feature this system. So this is a departure from the old system, which was 5 strings overall, right? You had your 2 cables, you had a string here, your split bus on either end, and then of course your bowstring, very similar to Matthews, Prime, some of the other bows on the market, right, using those split bus systems. This new system from PSE allows you to actually, the cable splits, twists around itself, and allows you to add twist to either side of the cable to cant the cams one way or another. Now, when I had the strings off this bow, I fired a few dozen rounds just messing around with putting half twist, full twist, one side the other, one cam the other, both cams at the same time. Really messed around with it a lot to see just how much adjustment you could get out of this system. I found that as PSE advertised and as some of their reps have talked about, I think Corey Miller talked about this on his video he did with Inside Out Precision, but he with Garrett Weaver, but he talked about that you can get about a ½ inch of adjustment out of the system, and that's what I found as well. Now, not totally surprisingly, I found that ultimately for my bow to tune how it wanted to be tuned, with the arrows that I'm running, it prefer there to be no cant in the system. So I'm actually running it with it pulling equal pressure on both sides, so there's actually no cant on either cam. The way that I just kind of test that out of the bow press is I'll actually just take a shaft or something straight and I'll put it on, it's got to be on this side of the PSE cam because this is has the same material, right? So it's the same surface area, and I'll use an arrow or something straight to just test to see if the cam is in line with the bowstring, and I'll do that to both sides. So that's just a good way to kind of eyeball it coming out of the press. And when I did it that way, I found that the bow was pretty well tuned with my arrow rest shooting right down the middle, and then I was able to tune out just a little bit of my left and right tear using the adjustable cable guard. So of course the amount of adjustment you're going to be able to get out of the cable guard is going to depend on how your rest is set up, you know, which could depend on your grip torque and also the clearance that your particular vanes and arrow setup give you. But between the cable guard and the bus system, you've got about almost an inch of play and adjustment there, and then with your rest you've got a little bit more than that. So no need to mess with the spacers in most cases. Honestly, having talked to a lot of PSE shooters and having set up a couple of bows myself at this point, and talked to shops and just people that have been playing with these PSEs a lot over the last couple of years, if you find that you can't tune out your left and rights by just using the cable guard and now this new PBS system and, you know, maybe a tweak to the rest, it's probably more a grip or an arrow issue than it is a bow issue. So overall impression of the PSE EVL 32, I love this bow. It's awesome. I think it's a great bow. I think the changes that PSE made this year, the introduction of the split, the precision bus system and the wider limb pockets, the bow is much more stable. It is quieter. It is easier to tune than years past. So they took a bow that, in my opinion, I already really liked in the Evo system, and they made it more tunable, quieter, and just more user-friendly and more stable. So nothing to really dislike there. I'm a big fan of what they did with that. Now, how does it stack up to my favorite bow? Well, for one, is this still my favorite bow? So I can count on pretty much every single day I will get at least one person that will reach out and ask, Expedite or Evo, which one should I go with? The way this bow feels to draw compared to the EVL, it's almost identical. I mean, look at the cams. The Expedite actually pulls a little smoother, probably because this is a 33-inch axle bow and the EVL is a 32. But the Expedite, for me, a 28.5 inch draw length shooter, that 5.5 inch brace height has not been a factor for me in terms of accuracy. I shoot both of these bows exactly the same. If I shoot the same arrow out of these bows, when I walk down to collect them, my group's at say 100 yards, I can't tell which arrow came out of which bow. Both of these bows are forgiving in the setups that I have them set up in. Now, that being said, the Expedite does have more vibration, and it is a louder bow. And if you're a longer draw length shooter, that 5.5 inch brace height may be more of a factor for you. So it might be easier to recommend or pick up the EVL. And also it is a 32 inch as opposed to a 33 inch. So if you're, say, a big ground blind hunter, 32 inches is probably getting towards the high end of what would be comfortable in a lot of blinds that are on the market anyway. So that might be a factor for you to take into consideration as well. If I was in a movie, right, and I was an action hero in a movie and I was slaying monsters with my bow and arrow, this would be the bow you would probably see me using for 90% of the film. And then before, like in the montage Rambo style of me like tuning up a bow, getting ready to go slay the boss level monster, the Expedite would probably be that bow. But when I have both these bows hanging up on the wall behind me and it comes time to go to the range, I find myself picking up the EVL more often than the Expedite lately. And I'm not sure if it has to do with just the combination of accessories that I have on the EVL, that maybe I just like shooting this bow more. Maybe it's the fact that it's a little quieter, a little bit more dead in the hand. It feels more like plinking with the EVL. So if you're in the market for a PSE, right, hopefully the things that I laid out, take those into consideration and just figure out which is going to be right for you. The EVL, being as forgiving and quiet as it is a very easy recommendation to make. But if you want the baddest mother on the market right now, it's really hard to beat this Expedite. That Kong bow that Dudley built for Joe Rogan, that's an Expedite. It's just a badass bow. Now, something I didn't talk about and that I kind of glossed over that I really appreciate that PSE does is when they come out with new technologies like the PBS system, right, or when they swapped from the old roller guide or the old cable guide to the new roller guide system, PSE makes those accessories available to retrofit older model bows. So if I wanted to, I could talk to one of my string builders. I could buy these little plastic PBS tools, and I could have them build me a set of strings just like this, so I don't have to worry about using spacers. Not that I had to mess with the spacers on this bow anyway. And I could tune the Expedite just like I do the EVL. And if you have any of the NTNs or the older NXTs, pretty much any Evolve cam system bow, talk to your string builders and they can probably build you strings. And you may some string builders can actually acquire these for you. Otherwise, talk to your dealer, look online, you can probably pick these up, and they run pretty cheap. So that's pretty cool that PSE allows you to retrofit older bows with newer technology. The same can be said for these roller guides, right? If you wanted to pick that up, I know Lancaster Archery has them available. You can purchase them online. And there's some other little accessories that you can update your older model PSEs with some of the newer features, which I think is pretty cool. Cool that PSE makes that available. Ending that tangent, which one of these bows should you pick? Hopefully the considerations I laid out make that decision a little easier for you. You can take some of those into account. But if you have the means, I highly recommend picking up both of these bows. Why? Why not? As for me, which one is my favorite bow?